do like a step-by-step run through on how to use the simulator. Mark, maybe you might be able to speak to it a little bit better than I can. If you want to go ahead and tell us exactly what we'll be doing today. You're muted.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I thought today it might be fun just to kind of catch everyone up on where we're up to with this sort of visualization application that I've created for basically as an educational resource, I think, so that people can see in a very visceral way how Carbon compares to other protocols, both in terms of its financial performance, and there will be specific cases where Carbon performs better than its competitors, and there'll be specific cases where Carbon's competitors perform better than it. And it's important to focus in on precisely which types of trading strategies Carbon appeals to and which ones that it doesn't. So I think that that's important in identifying the niche, right, that Carbon currently occupies, because it is alone, right, in its offering, whereas the competitors all tend to appeal to exactly the same thing. So they're competing with each other, but Carbon is attempting to do something else. So there's that component. The other thing is obviously the mechanics of Carbon, right? If it is doing something that's different to its competitors, then how is it doing that, right? What does it look like? And it is naive to assume that everyone is going to be able to digest the formulas and the code and things like that. And so what I wanted to do is to create something that is a little bit easier to engage with, and that's also kind of fun to engage with, right? So that you can kind of do do things yourself and see what the results are and in a way learn about trading. Not just about DeFi or DEXs or anything, but also like what are different trading strategies and how do people make a living out of this, and what are those strategies designed to do, and how can they fail, and everything else. So yeah, on today's call, and I think it's possible that I can share my screen, I think we're just going to basically have a look at the simulator and take a request to download a particular price chart, and then process that price chart and have a look at what the results look like on Carbon, Uniswap v3, and Uniswap v2. And then we're going to see what the outputs are, how you can use them, and if you're educating yourself or educating others, how you can use those outputs, because there's a bit of variety there. Does that sound good, Jen?
Yeah, no, it sounds fantastic. We might even have some people on the call who have downloaded that themselves. So if you did, I see you. I won't call you out, but if you were able to, please post it in the live stage calls so that we can use your example as well. I know that that was something that you wanted to do. If we can do it as a group here and do a walkthrough, would love to do that. Otherwise, if you want to put your hand up, you can speak to it also. Cool. Mark, go for it.
Okay, what can you see right now? Can you see my Firefox?
Yes.
Okay, great. So
do we have blurry.
Is it? Not. I'm afraid there's probably not much I can do about that, but that's okay. I'll comment. My commentary should make it clear what's happening.
Perfect.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and download. So I mean, maybe just like almost to prove that the simulator does what we say it does, and that I'm not sort of showing you preloaded data or cherry picked data or something. I was hoping we could get like a bit of audience participation. Maybe someone who's here to actually, who wants to see the simulator run. Maybe they've got a particular price chart in mind or something. Can we get can we field some suggestions for which price chart we should go after first? Preferably something that's that we can measure the price of in USD. Jen, have you fielded? I know you spoke to people before the event.
I did, and I'm looking to see if maybe he is going to put his hand up. Otherwise, I sent him a message. Maybe he'll go ahead and share whichever it was that he was looking to share. Okay, so he said MIM has interesting price action.
Yeah.
So
Okay, let's have a look. I think that's Magic Internet Money on CoinGecko. Here we are. Cool. Okay. So this is I've got Doc Reader, by the way, so it will probably look like this to you usually. So I'm just on the CoinGecko page, and there's a couple of different ways you can get price there, and this is just one of the ones that I support, and it's also I would say one of the better sources of price data, especially for doing carbon style simulations. It's not at all good for doing Uniswap v3 simulations because it's basically just going to give you the data points that allow this chart to be drawn. And what that misses is a lot of that sort of intraday volatility that allows Uniswap v3 fees to accrue. So if you're getting a price chart from CoinGecko, just be aware that it's not the best, but I can show you a hack at the end of this presentation that will make it better for estimating Uniswap v3 returns and things like that. So the first thing you're going to do is after you've chosen your token, go ahead and hit this historical data tab. And that's going to give you this enormous table. It's got some volume data in there, and we can use that to our advantage later. It's also got open and close prices. And if you choose a range up here, you can filter this table and scrape it directly from the website. CoinGecko also has an API that you can use. But for most users, I'm assuming that exporting it as a simple CSV is probably going to be the most accessible thing for them. So if you scroll right down to the bottom of this page, and you see this little button that says export as, choose CSV, and that should begin the download. I'm just going to open it quickly so that we can see what sort of data is inside it. And you can see here that it actually gives you a fairly truncated version of what used to be there, right? Or at least what the page shows. So you get a timestamp, you get a price. The market cap is apparently 0 for quite a while. And you get a total volume. Now we can use this volume data, like I said, to create a little bit more data than is here, or at least estimate intraday volatility. But if you want to, you can just use this price column. It's totally fine. So this CSV file, I'm going to save that, where it downloaded from me, okay, is right here. And I'm going to move this to a new location where we're going to be able to perform a simulation with it. And I will show you this in just a minute. So I'm just going to put the MIM-USD one here, and then we're going to go ahead and open the simulator. Now the simulator is built to run out of something called Jupyter Notebooks. And for those who aren't familiar, after you've installed it and open it, it's going to run this terminal, and this terminal is pretending to be a web server, and that allows the notebook to run directly out of your browser. But don't make a mistake of thinking that this is dependent on internet access or anything like that. It is a completely standalone thing, and all of these directories that you see are the actual directories on your computer. So you can see here, if I go to OneDrive, and then I go and find that that folder where I just put it, you can see here I've got that that MIM USD CSV that we just generated on CoinGecko. So the first thing you're going to want to do is start this this program called Simulation Start GUI. Okay, and there's a lot of code here, and I'm gonna put these things into modules and import them separately. I haven't done that yet. But really, the only thing you need to do is scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you'll see that there is this command right at the end that says start information equals get user input interactive, and then there's a file in quotations. And that file that we're going to use is the file name of whatever CSV that we just downloaded, right? So we just paste that file name into here. And then we run the entire notebook by clicking these double arrows at the top of the page. So we agree to restart and run all of these cells. And what that's going to do is give us this interactive chart, right? Jen, can you see that okay? Is it better if I make it a bit larger like that?
I can see it okay. I was told to tell you to adjust your screen to 30 FPS if that might help. For the, let me see, adjust your frame rate. That might make it a little bit clearer. At certain points it's clear, at certain points it's not. Whatever you just did worked. Did you just do something?
I just made the screen, the zoom slightly larger on my browser. And I'll try and
Okay,
adjust the
that
frame
works.
rate later. I don't know
No, that worked.
if this
Whatever you
is
did, it made it
okay.
clear.
Okay, good. Okay, so this is just the line chart of the data that we just read from CoinGecko. And so this slider here allows you to like zoom in on a certain part of that chart that you actually specifically want to simulate. It's worth noting here that we're getting the slice information down the bottom, and we've got price data on the side. This range down the bottom is important to note because this is going to be the number of frames that your animation includes. So if we go all the way out and just use all of this information, we're going to be having something just shy of 600 frames in our simulation, which is fine. I'm happy to use that. But there'll be times when you download information from CoinGecko and you'll have like 10,000 data points, and that's going to be a very, very large GIF that gets generated, and it's going to be a very large number of separate PNG frames that get printed. So I don't recommend doing that. So maybe for the sake of this demonstration, I'm just going to make it nice and small so that we don't have to wait too long to see what happens. Now, after you select your range, if you hit this OK button, you'll be taken to the next panel where you will be invited to play with these sliders, which will let you choose your Uniswap v3 style portfolio. And so here you can see I can select essentially any range I want. This isn't a true reflection of Uniswap v3 in the sense that it's not tick-based. So it will, you will give you whatever resolution you want, imagining that Uniswap has an infinite number of ticks, which, if anything, is probably a slightly less. It gives you more power as a user to make a decision than the constraints that are currently on that protocol. So I don't consider this to be, something that would mischaracterize or misrepresent the productivity of the Uniswap protocol specifically. But remember what I said before, if we're using just this simple price chart, we're going to miss a lot of volume. And that's something that we can talk about at the end of the presentation about how to adjust for that. There are other sources of data that you can get, both like the high, low, and close price, and those sometimes are a little bit better at capturing the type of volume that you would see for different parts in the market. But I am working on a way of using the volume data directly in order to basically flesh out the price chart with more data points, which is something that I presented on the whiteboard not too long ago. So I think this is probably a pretty, like most Uniswap v3 providers, I think would be pretty happy with something like that, right? It goes out of bounds occasionally, but only briefly, and then sort of comes back into range. And this is where they, the longer they stay in range, the more profitable they are. So there's only about 6 cents of spread here, so or 6 cents of compression for their liquidity, and I think that that's a fairly concentrated position. So again, we hit OK, and the very next panel that we're presented with is going to split that range in half, or at least geometrically in half, and it's going to invite us to then play around with 4 different sliders, and these represent our carbon ranges. And so if you don't touch them, then essentially you've got a very good heads-up comparison. Again, except for the volume data, that if you had good volume data, then this would be an exact 1-to-1 heads-up comparison of carbon versus Uniswap for that same range. And so if that's the sort of thing you're interested in exploring, right? If you've got a particular strategy that you do want to that you do want to simulate to work out which protocol is the right one to use, then if you just click OK straight away after moving to this panel, then I think that that's a good way to go about doing this. But if you wanted to simulate something else, so for example, what it would look like if carbon was had a slightly larger spread here. Maybe we want to move this part up here and capture some more of this activity. Then you can do that, right? There's it only suggests your starting carbon position for the sake of having the the most robust simulation condition, but it doesn't require you to use it. So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to choose something here where we're going to get some interesting data. So I want like as many crosses across this boundary as we can get, and I also want to be able to capture some of these like deep eggs, which is something that that carbon is specifically good at compared to other concentrated liquidity protocols. So I think, yeah, maybe something like this might be good, or it's. I'm probably just being pedantic at this stage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to this back up. Otherwise, people are going to accuse me of being, using knowledge of the future to create an artificially good position, and I don't want. So let's stick with something like this. We're getting a good number of crosses. It's comparable to this position, but not the same. But whatever, right? You can choose your own conditions. Now, in the next panel, and this is a feature of Carbon that we haven't spoken about in a lot of detail, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it now. But after you've chosen a range on Carbon, you can actually choose your starting position inside that range with the liquidity that you're providing. So just because you have price bounds at X and Y doesn't necessarily mean that you need to start your position at that price. You can actually choose any price inside here. And this is I would say a fairly sophisticated feature, and it requires I'd say a very good fundamental knowledge of how Carbon works in order to use this feature well. And so for brevity's sake, I'm not going to get into it in too much detail today, but maybe that's something we can talk about on a future DAO discussion, right? It's very, very good for things like breakout trading and other things where you might want to catch something at a certain price and have your other boundary correct closer to the market price as a result, things like that. So we're just going to use whatever it suggests. I should point out here that it won't let you create a position that would be automatically arbitraged. So here, the price within the red zone, within the selling zone, is actually forced to be a minimum of whatever the current market price is. So because we cut the price chart over here, and that's where the price starts, it's actually going to tell us we can't start below that, because that would mean that the position is immediately arbitrageable. Obviously, in Carbon pure, right, in the way that we actually release it, that's something you can potentially do if you wanted to. Like you will be allowed to do that, but the front end will warn you that you're about to do it. But this is actually one of the things that can be used for like flash liquidations and other things. So I don't want you to think that because the simulator won't allow you to do it, that it's impossible. It's just something that I'm discouraging, so that we get good simulation results and people don't accidentally, throw the simulation in a bad direction by accidentally setting the price too high or too low to start. After you've chosen these ranges, you can then set your weights, right? And this is just to say that when we choose the starting portfolio value, which is going to be denominated in USD, these weights will tell you how that portfolio should be distributed. So if I set this 1 and 1, it just means put an equal weight, an equal amount of value on both my TKN side of the portfolio and my USDC side of the portfolio. If I say 2 to 1, then this means that the TKN should be worth twice as much as the USDC and so on. So there's no like right or wrong way to do this. It's just one of the things that you have to take into consideration when you begin that simulation. The portfolio value speaks for itself. I'm just going to use 10,000, which is what I tend to use for everything. It doesn't really affect anything because we assume an infinitely deep market when we're doing these simulations. Again, something I'll speak about in an upcoming blog. The protocol fees component is really, really important, especially for things like Uniswap's productivity for the user side. And this slider will bring you anywhere between 1 basis point and up to 100 basis points. And I think somewhere around 20 to 30 basis points is generally what I recommend you simulate at. This is fairly close to where concentrated liquidity protocols operate today. And so that's where I recommend. But if you out of curiosity, wanted to simulate something like a 1% swap fee, or a virtually non-existent swap fee, this simulator will let you do that. I've just had to put bounds on it so that we don't end up with a whole bunch of meaningless results that people are generating. I wanted to keep this quite reasonable, and because Uniswap V3 is contingent on fees, I didn't want to make it too easy to set it to 0 or something and end up with giving these other protocols a bad name. So after you've chosen that protocol fee, you can then choose which protocols you want to include. We've got Carbon, Uniswap V2, and Uniswap V3. I'm going to include all 3 for this instance. And after hitting OK, it's going to ask you whether or not you want to animate it. Obviously, you can only check one of these boxes at a time. We are going to animate this, and then we're going to hit OK. And that is the very last step to setting this up. So the whole point of this program is to just get the user inputs and arrange them in such a way that the actual main simulator can understand it. And what that does, when you push that final OK button after you've chosen whether or not you want to animate it, it generates this file here called start conditions, right, in big capital letters. And then it will have the name of the CSV that was used to create it, followed by the file extension .pickle, which is just a binary file that is very convenient to use in Python. Now, at the moment, after you finish that GUI, you then need to start up this next simulator. I'm hoping to sort of merge these 2 processes together, but it's still fairly easy. You just open this up, and again, you flip all the way to the bottom, and you're going to find a command that says run simulation, and all it's asking for is that that file name. So you take whatever that thing said, start conditions, underscore the name of the price chart that you used, .pickle, and then again you hit these 2 double arrows, restart and run all of the cells, and hopefully this should start working. Now, this can take a little while because this is going to start filling up with PNGs, and I'll show you what that looks like by clicking on one of these. Right, so you can see it's creating individual frames for this animation, and so it's going to go through quite a number of these for all 3 protocols. So you can see that each one of these PNGs, it starts with the name of the CSV that we downloaded, and then underscore the name of the protocol that this particular performance data belongs to, and then underscore followed by another number, which indicates the frame number. And so you can see we're generating this for Carbon up to basically whenever it is we run out of data. We're generating it for Uniswap V2 at the same time, and we're also generating it for Uniswap V3, which should be down here somewhere. Okay, so we've got frames for each one of these, and it's going to basically keep going until it's run out of frames. If you are running this directly out of your browser, like I am here, and you're doing this on a Windows machine, you'll see that there's a little hourglass in the tab, which lets you know that the simulation is still running. And if you're on a Mac, I've actually found that hourglass doesn't exist. I'm not sure why, but it doesn't matter because in that, oh no, what's happening? Okay. In that cell where it's got this little in thing, there'll be square brackets with little asterisks in it. And that little asterisk will tell you that it's currently running everything. So I think I screwed this up by opening up one of these PNGs while it was trying to run it. And so it didn't have that available to it. So I'm just going to run this again.
That's a good thing to know, because I didn't know up until now that you couldn't open a PNG while you're running it. So no.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can, but yeah, I mean, you can do it. But basically, if it needed that file at the time that I was looking at it, then it's not going to be able to do anything with it.
Right.
Okay, so while that's running, let's quickly go through. Let's quickly have a look at some stuff that I prepared earlier, so that we can just see what it, what this stuff looks like. Yeah. Okay. All right. So it generates a couple of different things. So I have created. So this is obviously not the MIM one. I'll show you the MIM one after it's finished. But this is one I did for that sort of sinusoidal price chart. And you can see this thing stops. I stop this. Okay. So you can see it generates the price chart in the top left, and it also shows those liquidity ranges and how they adjust, right, as the price moves around inside them. And so here you can see the distinctive character of carbon really shining through, which is rather than let the liquidity that's being purchased and sold move the other thing's liquidity across the entire range, it will only do it up to the border that's defined by the user, right? So this is the the sell high range, and that sell high range is defined in such a way that it is distinct from the buy low range. Whereas on Uniswap V3, okay, the buy range and the sell range is one and the same thing. Okay, and so this is why you'll see these files get produced with the annotations symmetric concentrated liquidity and asymmetric concentrated liquidity with carbon in parentheses on the ladder. So this is what symmetric concentrated liquidity looks like. And I think that this is a fairly good, visual for understanding these protocols. You can see very, very clearly that as the price moves through this range, it flips from green to red. And then when it moves back up through this range, it flips from red back into green. And the border is always exactly where the price currently is, right? And this is exactly the way that Uniswap V3 behaves. Let's have a quick look at Uniswap V2. So here you can see I've actually fixed the depth chart, right? So in a couple of examples that I've shown earlier, this depth chart wasn't working correctly, but it is now. But you can see it has that exact same behavior of wherever the price currently is, that is where the green liquidity is being converted into red liquidity and vice versa. The only difference is with V2 compared to V3 is that the price ranges are infinite, right? And this is why this depth chart just never runs out of liquidity, right? It doesn't matter how far the price moves, there will always be 50% of its liquidity on one side and 50% of its liquidity on the other side. And this is true at all possible price points. This is how a hyperbola, or using a hyperbola as a pricing curve actually operates. And then again, last time for carbon, before we have a look at the MIM files, you can see just how dramatically different this is. It's got that same behavior of concentrated liquidity, where there is a limit to how there is a limit to the width available for the liquidity that you've provided. But what's different is that the green part and the red part are separated. Right, they are asymmetric. They have an influence on each other, but it's not equal and opposite. And that's the key difference, right, between a typical concentrated liquidity protocol and what it is that we're building. It should be, important to note that as well. We've got this performance versus hodl chart in the top right, which I find extremely helpful. Obviously, this is a very unnatural price chart, so don't use this as like a evidence for why Carbon outperforms any other protocol. I mean, it does under these circumstances, but these are exceptional circumstances.